Hi and welcome back to part 2. We're going to get ready to build these printer heads. And I'm back in the perspective view, and we really don't need to see, well, first off, we don't need to see this cube anymore. So I'm going to just click it off. And we don't really, for right now, need to see our cloner and tracer nulls, which I had put on a layer. So if you're using the downloaded file, then that's already set up. So I'm going to remove it from the object manager. I'm going to turn off render so it won't render, and I'm going to turn off the visibility. And this cone here for now, I think we're going to, actually I think we're just going to dump that. And let's rename this primary printer head. Okay. And let's get a new null and put in the object manager. Name this printer heads global move. All right. And spell that right? Yep. And then another null under that. And we're going to name that move in Z, but let's put printer heads. Maybe beginning printer heads move in Z. And then let's just get one more. Actually, let's wait on that. So I want to take this, let's go over here. Let's make this a cube and put it in XZ and increase it quite a bit. Okay, I think I've got nulls turned off. Yep. Make sure you have your null turned on in here, the filter. All right, so that's way too big. Now let's make it 100 for now. Go into the basic tab. Let's turn the color on. And let's make it a red, but a red we can see. Okay. So now we want to copy. So control click. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that gives us a total of 7. If you select them all, you can see right here in the attributes manager 7 elements are selected. Okay, so in the Candy Conveyor movie, I know I told you we were going to hook the wires to the cloner, but I found a different way and I think it works better, and here I'll show you why. I'm in my printer head file I set up to render that for the beginning of this tutorial. And if I play this, of course, it's not going to play real fast. But maybe you could see that little lag in these parts. See how that's raising up and dipping down? And as soon as you stop it, it'll correct itself. But you can really see it when you just go through there. That almost pulled completely out. But then it sets. And this is a priority thing within Cinema. And I have tried everything I know how to fix that problem. Changing the order, changing this, changing that. And I had a similar issue like this in another thing I was working on. And I sent that file to Maxon, and they couldn't figure it out either. So there is some kind of, there you saw that lag. I mean, it corrects itself. And usually in a render, you don't notice it as much because it's rendering frame by frame. But it is a problem if you want to go back and render just a portion of that animation. You may get a little jump in that part. But we're going to set it up in a better way so we don't have that. So I'm back in our file. And let's go ahead and set this up. Let's get an Espresso node. And we want to, let's put some user data on this. It's temporary, but add it and float. Let's do a float slider. And I think we need real numbers here. And that all is fine. Yeah, that'll work. Okay. So let's pull this into here. Right click, come down and get our user data. And I didn't bother naming it because I'm going to pitch it. So what we want to do is, let's turn our cloner back on for a second. And if we go into this cloner, you see the count is 7, that's the amount, and 300 centimeters on Z. And what that is measuring, because it's per step, so it's 300 centimeters between each piece of candy to the center of that piece of candy. So you can also do it at endpoint, which then it becomes 1800. But we're going to go ahead and do it per step since it's already set up that way. I'm going to turn that back off and out of there. So what we want to do is we need a math node. Calculate. Oops. Not float math. So calculate and math. And so what we want to do is set this to multiply. And this first one, we are going to multiply by 2. Okay. 3. Actually, let's do that in the bottom. Let's leave that 0. Multiply 2. 3. 4. 5. And 6. Okay. And so let's just hook the data into the top of each of these nodes. And I may not have this exactly right, but we'll get it fixed. Printer Z is at the point where we want it. We don't need to do anything with that. Moving Z1, we're going to go to the coordinates, position Z. Now this one, we want to get the number straight from our data slider, which right now is 0, so it's not going to move anywhere. Okay? The other ones, we want to multiply. I'm just controlled dragging copies. So we'll hook this into there, into there, into there, there, into there. Okay. Now we have to assign these the proper nulls. So this is Z1. And remember, Z, we're just not doing the first one. So I'm going to pull this into 2. Grab 3. Pull it onto this. And you see the number should change at the end. Pull 4 onto here. 5. And 6. Now, if we come back to our slider, data, now we have essentially the same action as the cloner. Okay? And since we have that now, let's go back in and turn our cloner on. And this is the dimension we want. Just eliminate that. Pull your cloner in here. Go back to Z. Pull that in. Whoops. Didn't go in. All right. And we can go ahead and hide that. Okay. So now, if we, in layers, we turn that on. And you will see, let's go into top view, that these are the clones we just created. They line up perfectly in Z. And I should just leave this on for a second. So if you change the spacing of the candy, the printer heads will update and align perfectly. Okay, so I'm going to reset this and just turn this stuff off. So let's go back into perspective view, and I want to get that cloner, this print head global move into the same position as this printer head. So actually, why don't we just temporarily drag it into here, right under primary printer head, and right click, and then pull that out. And let's see, and then hit S to center it in the viewport. So it looks like we have the same, yeah, exact same position, and I do want it underneath there. Okay, so let's start working on our printer head. So let's go into our primary printer head and select the cone. Let's go into the Object tab, and I want to change the height segments to a 60 and the rotation segments to 80. And plus Y is good. And in the caps, let's go to, we need to switch on the top and bottom. Okay. Now, you're probably asking yourself, why didn't I just use a cylinder at this point? And the reason is because with a cylinder, you don't have control over the top and bottom separately. And so that's why I'm doing it this way. So let's change the cap segments to 5 and 10. And then the top radius, let's make that 130, and the height 35, and then the radius 15 on the bottom, and the height also 15. So now we've got a little nicer shape. We've got some curve to the top, but a little flatter on the bottom. Okay, so let's get a displacer in there. So if you hold shift down, you go into your deformers and grab the displacer, okay? And then we need to go into the coordinates and right click these two little arrows to zero it out, okay? And then if we go into the Objects tab, let's make this 75%, and we'll make the height 20, and we can leave it intensity centered. So let's go into the shading for our displacer, and I just want to take a look at, okay, yep, good. We can leave that off for now. And let's go grab noise. And we want to go into the noise, and you want to grab this one. If you click on this little arrow, it'll bring up these icons, and it's basically the fourth over from the left called cell noise. All right, the 665 we can leave. Let's make the global scale 835, and make the scale on basically X to 375. The scale on Y to 95, and the scale on Z to 270. Then if you come down to this low clip parameter, make that 40%, and all that's doing is giving it a little more contrast. And already you can see we've got some nice definition in there. So let's go back into our cone, and let's reduce the bottom radius to, say, 80, about 84. We can adjust that later. Okay, so let's get a material on our printer head. So if you double click in here, get a new material, drop it on the cone. And let's go into the displacer and go into the shading and right click and just copy. Then go into the color tab and click on texture and just paste, right click and paste. And let's change this black. I'm in HSV. Let's change that to 80% in V. Okay, gives us a nice light gray. We just want a little bit of contrast. And that's good there. And so let's go in here, check this. That's good. And then pull this down to, I don't know, maybe 25%. So if we render, you see we get a slight coloration and between these shapes, and that works out pretty well. So let's go into the Reflectance tab under Default Specular. That's fine that way. Let's give this 32, fall off minus 14 or so, inner width around 10, and let's kick the specular strength up. We want some kind of hard reflection, or highlights rather. And then we want to enable displacement. So in the displacement tab, let's go down to the texture and select noise. And we're going to go in there, grab that cell noise again, and let's make the global scale 900%, and then just change the scale in Y here to 75, and the rest of this can stay the same. So we want to go in here and change some of these settings. So for the height, we want 2 centimeters, and then check this sub-polygon displacement. Subdivision level 4 is good. Let's check on round geometry, and then map resulting and rounded, and we don't want to keep the original edges. Okay, and actually we may not want round contour either. Alright, so let's do a quick render, see what that looks like. So that's cool. We've got some nice extra details showing up, so that looks good. Alright, so just to get a little more definition, let's go add in some ambient occlusion and just switch this around so we can see a little more of these details, and then render. And you can start to see how cool this is looking. Then of course if you go in here to the anti-aliasing, choose best. I'll just leave that for now because I'm not going to leave that on. And then do it again. So we get a lot of detail, a lot of cool stuff going on. This is a great technique for like making spaceships or any kind of techie looking stuff, unless it, of course, unless it has to actually look like a real thing. So let's turn the ambient occlusion off for now and put the anti-aliasing back to geometry. Okay, so let's add some of the other parts we need. Let's get a cylinder and bring it down into the movement Y null, go into the coordinates, right click on these 2 little arrows to zero it out. Then let's make that, make it 1600, oops. Okay, zoom out here a little bit and make this about 30 for now. And we'll just pull that up in Y. And then we want to give this, I'm going to grab the garage shading lines. We want to give this quite a few height segments. Maybe a little bit more. Okay. Alright. I'm going to go back to garage shading. I'm going to hold down Shift and go up and get a displacer deformer for our cylinder. And let's put this down to 2 and just intensity, which means it'll just push out, it won't push in. And then let's go back and get a noise and get our old cell noise. And let's get a different seed. Let's try 921. Some good luck with that. And for the global scale, 300%. And then for our scale in Y, 160. And let's change the low clip to 52. I'm just going to put it in. And the high clip to 72. Alright. So we're kind of getting something going on there. I think we may need to boost this up to, let's try 800. And I think we're going to need some more. There we go. I just want something kind of mechanical looking. That looks pretty good. I don't really see it a lot. And maybe let's crank up these so it gets a little sharper. And maybe these two. Okay. That looks good. Okay, and let's duplicate that cylinder, but get rid of the deformer and make it a little radius, and maybe around there, and bring this way down. Okay, we just want a little cap for on here. So that's actually going to have to be bigger. So get up, and this is just, whatever looks good to you. And then we'll do the, actually I like it kind of like that. That looks good. Let's create a material, kind of a dark gray or whatever color you want. I'm going to color maybe something in there. And then I just want to make the specular a little bit sharper. Maybe just give it a little bit of color. Just slightly. Okay, that's good. And then we'll put that on our, and I want to make that diameter a little smaller. And maybe not quite as much displacement. And now I want the cylinder smaller too. Little cap. Yeah, see if we can push that down. Nope. It needs to be slightly above there. So now let's get building our whole assembly. So what I want to do is just click both of those so we don't have to see that in the viewport. And I'm going to go to my cone. Okay, that's selected. I want you to come up to the generators and click instance. Okay, and the cool thing, I don't use these a lot because sometimes they can slow down your viewport response, but for this they're going to work perfectly. So let's go back down into our printer heads global, and in this I want to grab the first printer heads move in Z, and I'm going to hold down shift. Actually, let's don't hold down shift. Let's just grab a null and drag it in there, and then go to the coordinates and right click. Okay, and so I want to name this printer head instance. Okay, and then I want to drag this cone down into there, and it's already zeroed out, so that's good. So let's go grab our cylinder that is for the shaft and do the same thing. Go up, grab an instance, and suddenly it shows up. And this we want to drag in there as well. Okay, and it's in the same position and everything. And then we're going to do that for our little bushing that fits around there. So I'm going to go up here. Oops, I didn't want to do that. Grab the instance, and we can just drag it right in there as well. You can see everything's showing up right where it's supposed to be. So let's add that little light in while we're at it. And we just want a sphere, and probably pretty small. We can adjust it more once we get it in here. And back to the coordinates. Okay. Okay. I'm going to have to show this for a second because I can't see it. All right. And we have it there. That'll look pretty good. Maybe over a little bit. I mean, wherever you want to put it is fine. I'm going to make it slightly smaller. Maybe pull it out just a bit. Okay, and we need two materials actually. Let's create one to begin with. And I'm going to make this green. And luminance, make it green as well. Okay. The reflectance, let's just give it a kind of a hard plasticky highlight. That looks good. Control drag this, and we're just going to make this a kind of orangey red material. Yeah, that looks good. Okay. So, oh, and let's put just a little bit of glow. And that's going to be too strong. 200 maybe 50 here, maybe 6. Okay, and you can mess with that later. And I think we do want this actually a little smaller. That's better. Okay, and let's get a, let's just use this. I'm going to control drag this. And I'm going to put it as a child of that sphere. And then zero everything out. Oops, I didn't want to do that. I want to zero out everything on the cylinder, not the sphere. Okay. The radius and the height. And it just gives it a little sleeve. And now if we rotate that slightly, it'll fit nicer on there. And bring it way down in radius. Yeah. And again, whatever, however you see it. Now it looks wonky because it wasn't completely straight in there. And let's just do a quick render and make sure that our displacement, yeah, that's a problem. So that's the material displacement. Don't get to see that to begin with. Okay. Oh, we're really going to have to pull that thing up. Oh, that's not what the problem is. Sorry. Let's put it back down there. Yeah, I need to allow it so it'll render. Okay, actually that works. Oh, and the glow looks good. Okay, so that looks good. Let's get up here and, oops, I'm sorry. Go in here and make an instance. And let's bring that down in here. And let's hide this again. And just do another render. Okay. So let's go ahead and wire this light. So we'll just leave that on. And let's turn this off. Okay. And let's go in here. And we want to set it up in here. And this is the range mapper we want to use. So what we want is under logic condition node. And then we want to click on the orange material we made and grab this little icon, drag it over here, and then click on the green material and drag it over here. Okay. Then click the red square, come down to object, do the same for here, and let's name these. Green, oops, green light and red light. Okay, so now we can see that better. And then we've got our green already applied to it. So let's drag that actual material in there and tag properties and come down to material. I'm going to hook that. Oops. We got to change the condition node to, where are you? Material. Okay. Click it in there. And then we'll hook one to there and one to there. And then we need under logic, a compare. Let's move all this down. And so we just want to compare a state, and we're going to just grab less than. Actually, we'll make it less than 200. See what happens there. So it's already starting on green. Okay, so you could have it green at the top or red at the bottom, whatever. I think I'm going to switch it to greater than, which is I guess what I wanted, so that it actually flashes green when it's at the bottom printing. Okay. Okay. So that looks good. Actually, we can close this. Okay, so let's turn this off, turn our printer heads back on, and now it's not going to go up and down yet, but you see we've got our flashing light. So that's going to work out great. So let's give some movement to our printer head. So I want to go in here and I want to give this an espresso tag. And let's go back in here. And I want to look at what we need for our motion. Now, this was the range mapper we used to give movement to our original primary printer head. And this is the movement Y. We don't really need that, but we can copy it over. And then we need the time node because it's hooked into the range mapper. And we need the speed control. So let's select those. And Command C, copy. You can close that. Let's open that. Double click it and paste. Okay, so we can actually get rid of this. All right, this is all we need for now. And if we pull our printer head instance in and go to coordinates, position Y, position Y, and hook this up. Okay. Close that, and we should have up and down movement, and you can see our green light is working. Okay, so that's good. So let's go back in here, and what we want to do is give our printer head some rotation. So if we go into the printer head instance null, and we just rotate on H, that's what we want, just a little something. And looks like maybe 45%, or 45 degrees rather, would be good. So let's take our range mapper and copy it. And we want to set, well, let's go ahead and hook these things up first. We want our frame to the input and our speed in frames to input upper. But the bottom one we want to change to degree. So the output lower will be 0. The output upper should be 45. Now it may end up being minus 45. Let's see. Okay, something, oh yeah, right. We need rotation in heading, H. Hook that up, and I saw a turn. So that looks good. Now you could have it, you know, in minus 45 if you wanted. And I think that's how I had it originally. So let's leave that. So now that we've got that, we've got our movement, we've got our light, let's go to part 3 and do the wires. Hopefully part 3 won't be as long as these first 2 parts, but this is way more involved than it seems when you look at it. Anyway, let's go to the wires and see you there.